This Reddit post has broken me. My sanity will never recover, and I will permanently be locked in a benchmarking cycle to attempt to find the difference between these settings right here. I am a broken man. If you haven't heard about this Reddit post, even though it's been circling around the Tarkov optimization community a little bit, I'll give you the long and the short of it. Hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, which you can find in your graphics settings right here. If you have a compatible card, should be 10 series and up with Nvidia GPUs, should have hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. If you have this on in combination with the Nvidia Reflex setting in game, so this right here, if you have it on with this, like this, in game, you can get lower FPS. According to this post, he was seeing big changes. I mean, like 20, 30 FPS boost. He says that right down here. He also saw better 0.1 and 1% lows, better, just smoother performance. I saw this post. I was like, oh boy, this should be a real easy thing for me to spot, right? Right? Turns out it wasn't. But to explain why it wasn't for me, I figured I'd explain these things a little bit just to have a better idea what these are. I've made videos on these in the past, and I've talked about them in various different videos as well. But essentially, I'll have these sources right here to talk about both Reflex and hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. But to give you the rundown, hardware accelerated GPU scheduling uses a GPU-based scheduling processor to help schedule tasks on the CPU that are related to sending things back to the GPU, and it can be useful for many applications. The reason why I was skeptical about this change is because it should be a transparent change. You shouldn't notice much difference in performance either way when you have this on versus off, and originally back in 2020, there wasn't much of a difference. And that's on top of Reflex, which, long story short, synchronizes the work that your GPU and CPU does per frame to ensure that the latest frame is always being worked on to therefore improve the latency of your game. The first thing that I thought when he mentioned that these two things are conflicting, based on this source, by the way, which I will also link in the description, is that hardware accelerated GPU scheduling and Nvidia Reflex might be conflicting in some way in terms of latency. But I figured since he mentioned such a drastic FPS shift that I'd benchmark the FPS first. And as you can clearly see, there wasn't much of a difference. I know generally having text on the screen is not how I do things, but the reason why I have the text on the screen is for you to see just raw numbers just put on there as I collected it. Normally when you have a performance difference like what's being discussed here, it's pretty easy to spot right off the gate. And then once you're able to spot it, then you can go ahead and do some additional tests to verify those changes, and then you can sort of solidify your answer. Here, I couldn't find that difference. I was extremely confused. I figured, he's seeing it and I'm not. What's the difference? What's the difference between our setups? Long story short, I thought it might have something to do with low latency mode in the driver, as I had that on at the time, and I'm pretty sure that Saint had it off. So I was like, okay, let me disable that and then try to run some of these tests again. It's the same thing. I had a bit of margin of error with this run, but besides that, there was literally no difference. Nothing that I could measure and nothing that actually made an impact here. And so I thought to myself, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? What else could I change? But I realized, as most of you probably know, that there is more to frames than just, well, the number. There's the frame time, there's also the render latency, and even stuff like the peripheral latency when you really get into the nitty-gritty. These settings right here, NVIDIA Reflex and hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, likely affect the render latency of any given frame. So I figured if there's any place where I can find a difference and find where there might be conflicting, it would be in the render latency. And so because of that, I did the absolute unthinkable and installed Nvidia GeForce Experience. Now, even though I absolutely despise this application, it does come with the FrameView SDK, which essentially allows me to see the render latency in the Nvidia GeForce Experience overlay. Once I have the overlay enabled, I can simply hit Alt+Z and go to the Performance tab and hit Settings right here, and then make sure I set my overlay to the Advanced section. Once I do that, I'll get a host of things that are popping up in the overlay when I hit Alt+R, the most important of which being the render latency number right there. That number I figured would be the key to me possibly finding a difference in between these two settings for my system. If there was any conflict, I might be able to find it through there. If I can't find it through the frame numbers, surely I'll see it through there. Now this is where the fun begins. Originally, I wrote down some numbers, just eyeballing the latency. And by the way, just assume if it's not labeled online, it's an offline test. And as you can see by these numbers, I was seeing a difference. With HAGS on, I was seeing double the amount of latency on streets when I was GPU or CPU bound. I thought, oh my god, I found the key. There wasn't much of a difference in GPU bound factory or CPU bound factory at all. And so I figured, I was like, maybe it's something to do with the load on streets, yada yada. So I decided to go online for streets specifically and see if I could find the impact there. And then I didn't. There was no difference in the numbers whatsoever. It stayed pretty consistent in terms of latency. Everything was in the rough same range. It wasn't the same drastic shift that I was seeing up here when I tested them earlier. And so, just as an FYI, this is probably the third time I've recorded this. You may be wondering, why is it the third time you've recorded this? Well, after I did this, I decided I recorded, and then I decided just to make sure I'd test it again. The numbers were exactly the same for HAGS on and off and Reflex on and off, again for latency, and it's stayed back to roughly the behavior factory after that run. At that point, I was completely lost. I didn't know where to go. And that's where we're at right now. I've spent so much time trying to find the differences in this setting that my head's about to explode. I simply can't process it anymore. But don't worry, I'm not going down without a fight, which is why I'm reaching out to you guys. I know some of you have found a difference with the setting, and god damn it, I'm gonna figure out what it is. I can't measure a latency impact, and the only thing I was able to measure is this weird difference in latency that I had with this HAGS on raid. I'm not able to recreate it, but this might have something to do with the reason why people are getting more frame rate. If I had to guess, it might be something with the frame buffer in the render pipeline, but I'm honestly not that sure. It's either that, or Tarkov has a better time handling the scheduling of tasks when the GPU isn't involved, explaining why some people are having better performance when they simply disable hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling. According to the original post over here, as far as this is concerned, they said that these can clash. The problem is this post doesn't really use precise language for how they describe hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling, as this really isn't what the Microsoft devlog said it was supposed to do. But I honestly trust Saint here that he was getting an improvement, which puts me in kind of a predicament. I'm not sure where to go, and then that's why I'm here. If you have noticed an improvement when you disable hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling and have Reflex enabled, or vice versa, please do let me know in the comments below, and make sure you benchmark it in a scenario where you can repeat it so you'll be able to see it. I'm trying to reach out for some help here to identify what the reason is for this, and I am not done with this topic. I will be back, goddammit. This is why this video was delayed, by the way. I needed to spend some extra time to figure out what the hell was going on, and also I had a lot of things going on in real life that I needed to work on as well. But yeah, long story short, please do test if hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling and Reflex are conflicting or giving you some abnormal FPS, as I want to see the effects for most of you in my audience, and I know I can at least get some trustworthy info from some of you, so I'm definitely reaching for some branches right now, but that's okay. With that though, I'm going to end this video, and I know it's kind of short, but I just had to put it out because I've spent so much time trying to look at this that I really just need to reach out for some help from you guys. For now though, if you notice anything, feel free to stop by on my streams on either Sunday at 1:30 p.m. or Friday at 6:30 p.m. CST, and let me know what you find, if you find any performance impact, because I really do want to know, and I want to at least get a ballpark of how people are being affected by this. This original post, along with all the links that I've used, will be in the description, so feel free to look at those and educate yourself on some of the various topics. Oh, and make sure you join the Discord. It will be linked in the description below. I appreciate all of you watching, and please, like I said, let me know in the comments below. Hit the usual YouTube buttons, liking, subscribing, all that stuff. And thank you so much for being patient and getting me almost to 5,000 subscribers. It's really awesome. But yeah, again, thank you all so much for watching. And this is Clem, clocking out. Later.